Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda Jai Vaita Chandra Jai Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Reading from Madhya Lila, Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, Chapter 8, talks between Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Ramananda Raya. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is known as Gauranga, is the reservoir of all conclusive knowledge in devotional service. He empowered Sri Ramananda Raya, who may be likened to a cloud of devotional service. This cloud was filled with all the conclusive purports of devotional service and was empowered by the ocean to spread this water over the sea. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself was the ocean of knowledge of pure devotional service. All glories to Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. All glories to Lord Nityananda. All glories to Advaita Acharya. And all glories to all the devotees of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. According to his previous program, Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went forward on his tour and after some days arrived at the place of pilgrimage known as Yadanishinga. After seeing the deity, Lord Nishinga, in the temple, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu offered his respectful obeisances by falling flat. Then, in ecstatic love, he performed various dances, chanted, and offered prayers. All glories to Lord Nishingadev. All glories to Lord Nishingadev, who is the Lord of Prahlad Maharaj, and like the honeybee, is always engaged in beholding the lotus-like face of the goddess of fortune. Although very ferocious, the lioness is very kind to her cubs. Similarly, although very ferocious to non-devotees like Hiranyakashipu, Lord Nishingadev is very, very soft and kind to devotees like Prahlad Maharaj. In this way, Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu recited different verses from the Shastra. The priest of Lord Nishingadev then brought garlands and remnants of the Lord's food and offered them to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. As usual, a Brahmin offered Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu an invitation. The Lord passed the night in the temple and then commenced his tour again. The next morning, in the great ecstatic love, Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu started on his tour with no knowledge of the proper direction, and he continued the whole day and night. As previously, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu converted to Vaishnavism many people he met on the road. After some days, the Lord reached the banks of the river Godavari. When he saw the river Godavari, the Lord remembered the river Yamuna. And when he saw the forest on the banks of the river, he remembered Sri Vrindavandam. When performing his usual chanting and dancing for some time in this forest, the Lord crossed the river, took his bath on the other bank. After bathing in the river, the Lord walked a little distance from the bathing place and engaged in chanting the holy name of Krishna. At that time, accompanied by the sounds of music, Ramananda Raya came there mounted on a palanquin to take his bath. Many Brahmins, following the Vedic principles, accompanied Ramananda Raya. According to the Vedic rituals, Ramananda Raya took his bath and offered oblations to his forefathers. Sri Ramananda Raya could understand that the person who had come to bathe in the river was Ramananda Roy. Repeat that again. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu could understand that the person who had come to bathe in the river was Ramananda Roy. The Lord wanted so much to meet him that his mind immediately began running after him. Although Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was running after him mentally, he patiently remained sitting. Ramananda Roy, seeing the wonderful sannyasi, then came to see him. Srila Ramananda Roy then saw Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as brilliant as 100 suns. The Lord was covered by a saffron garment. He was large in body, very strongly built, and his eyes were like lotus petals. When Ramananda Roy saw the wonderful sannyasi, he was struck with wonder. He went to him and immediately offered his respectful obeisances, falling down flat like a rod. The Lord stood up and asked Ramananda Roy to arise and chant the holy name of Krishna. Indeed, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very eager to embrace him. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then inquired whether he was Ramananda Roy, and he replied, "Yes, I'm your very low servant, and I belong to the Sudra community." Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then embraced Sri Ramananda Roy very firmly. Indeed, both the master and the servant almost lost consciousness due to ecstatic love. Their natural love for one another was awakened in them both, and they both embraced and fell down on the ground. When they embraced one another, ecstatic symptoms, paralysis, perspiration, tears, shivering, palpitations, and paleness appeared. The word Krishna came from their mouths falteringly. When the stereotyped ritualistic Brahmins who were following the Vedic principles saw this ecstatic manifestation of love, they were struck with wonder. All these Brahmins began to reflect as follows. These Brahmins began to think, we can see that this sannyasi has a luster like the effulgence of Brahman, but how is it that he is crying upon embracing a Sudra, a member of the fourth caste in the social order? They thought this Ramananda Roy is the governor of Madras, a highly learned and grave person, a Mahapandit, but upon touching this sannyasi, he has become restless like a madman. While the Brahmins were thus thinking in this way about the activities of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Ramananda Roy, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw the Brahmins and restrained his transcendental emotions. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Ramananda Roy was intimately related to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Therefore, he can be accepted as a Sajatiya, a person within the intimate circle of the Lord. The Brahmins, however, were followers of Vedic rituals, were not able to have an intimate connection with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Consequently, they are called Vijatiya Loka. In other words, they were not pure devotees. One may be a highly learned Brahmin, but if he is not a pure devotee, he is a Vijatiya, an outcast, one outside devotional service, in other words, a non-devotee. Although Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Ramananda Roy were embracing in ecstasy, the Lord restrained his transcendental emotions upon seeing the outsider Brahmins. Devotional service is completely transcendental to the modes of material nature, to the varnas and the ashrams, to the divisions of society. Devotional service can be performed purely from any position in society. And we see that in so many of the pastimes that are recorded in Chaitanya Bhagavat, recorded in Chaitanya Charitamrita. There are no impediments to pure devotional service, not birth, not health, not intellectual capacity, education. Pure devotional service is completely transcendental to any material consideration. So here we see how Brahmins, these are the priests, they're very educated. They follow a very high standard of cleanliness and very regulated, and certainly no sinful activity, very austere in a lot of ways, very self-controlled, engage their time in worshiping the deities, teaching from the Vedas about higher principles, and performing purificatory ceremonies for weddings and births and deaths. They're performing purificatory rituals. And in general, Brahmins are situated in the mode of goodness, peacefulness and happiness. But they couldn't enter into, and they couldn't understand the loving emotional platform, which is completely transcendental to any varna and ashram, which is only accessible by the Lord himself or through his pure devotee representatives. And that's the platform on which the Lord reveals himself. The Lord can be seen by the pure devotee and receive instruction from the Lord. Just like Lord Brahma received instruction within the heart, Lord within the heart directly instructed Lord Brahma and revealed to him the nature of the spiritual worlds, the nature of the material energy, the nature of devotional service, and the summum bonum, the goal of life, just return back home, back to Godhead, eternal position beyond birth and death, old age and disease. Spiritual planets. So the Brahmins, they were watching this and they couldn't understand what was happening. The ecstatic love that a pure devotee shares with the Lord, the happiness that the Lord feels in connecting with his pure devotee, and the ecstasy the devotee feels in connecting with the Lord. This was not open to them. So the Lord, it's explained, he restrained his emotions because there were onlookers who couldn't enter in. When they regained their sanity, they both sat down, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu began to smile and speak as follows. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya has spoken of your good qualities. He has made a great endeavor to convince me to meet you. This is how it works. This is how it always works, is a pure devotee of the Lord will recommend someone to the Lord. And when the Lord hears about that person from his pure devotee, like Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he becomes eager to meet that person upon the recommendation of his already established pure devotees, already in an established, the eternal relationship has already been revived and established. And when the Lord hears about someone else worthy of entering in also from that devotee, he becomes eager to meet them. That's the nature of devotional service. So get that recommendation from a pure devotee. So it's Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya has spoken of your good qualities, and he's made a great endeavor to convince me to meet you. There's so many examples of how this works. Veda Vyas, actually an incarnation of the Lord, for literary purposes, for writing the Bhagavatam and the Vedas, compiled and expounded all the Vedic literatures for the upliftment of human society. And when he was through, he'd done a great work, a great welfare work, giving so much knowledge of how to organize society, put things in order, leadership, medicine, everything is in the instructions in the Vedas. But he was feeling not complete. He was feeling despondent. His spiritual master, Narada Muni, instructed him that the problem, why he was feeling incomplete, despondent, and unfulfilled, is he had yet to directly glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead for no other reason, for no material gain, but simply to open the path back home, back to Godhead, to illuminate the path of devotional service. And that is where the Bhagavatam appears. The pure devotee Narada is very instrumental all throughout the pastimes of the Lord in bringing people to Krishna. So in that way, Vyasadeva received the mercy of the Lord and was able to glorify him nicely in the Bhagavatam. By the mercy of Narada. Dhruva Maharaj also, a small child born in the royal family, having been slighted by another wife of his kingly father, the king had several wives. He was slighted by one of the other queens, became very agitated and disturbed as to why he wasn't qualified to receive the kind of interaction with his father that he thought he had a right to, having been born from one of the other queens. Became very, very agitated and disturbed, and went to the forest. Small child, but very determined, and was performing austerities. In the forest, alone. The Narada Muni was drawn to the spot and gave the child mantra to meditate on. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And the child surrendered to Narada, took instruction from him, and began to chant the mantras. Because he surrendered to a pure devotee and followed his instructions for pleasing Krishna, he qualified for devotional service. Narada approached Lord Vishnu and explained the situation about this great soul. Although the child had some material desire to be powerful and to have a kingdom and not be slighted within the society that he had taken birth in, he took instruction from Narada, a pure devotee of the Lord, and he engaged in devotional service. So Narada explained the situation to Lord Vishnu. Lord Vishnu became eager to meet this person and enlighten him. He did. The Lord appeared before the child. And when Dhruva had the darshan of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all his material desires completely vanished. He had no desire whatsoever for anything material. He received full knowledge of who he was, what the universe is, what the goal of life is, the temporary nature of this world. The blissful spiritual nature of the eternal world. And that was by the mercy of pure devotee. Again, Narada. Narada is very active like that. So here, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya has spoken of Ramananda Roy's good qualities to the Lord. And he's made a great endeavor to convince me to meet you. Lord Chaitanya continues, indeed, I have come here just to meet you. It is very good that even without making an effort, I have gotten your interview here. Ramananda Roy replied, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya thinks of me as his servant. Even in my absence, he is very careful to do me good. By his mercy, I have received your interview here. Consequently, I consider today thou have become a successful human being. I can see that you have bestowed special mercy upon Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Therefore, you have touched me, although I am untouchable. This is due only to his love for you. You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan himself. And I'm only a government servant interested in materialistic activities. Indeed, I'm the lowest among men of the fourth class. You do not fear the Vedic injunction stating that you should not associate with a Sudra. You are not contemptuous of my touch, although in the Vedas you are forbidden to associate with Sudras. It's a section of Prabhupada's purport. Unless one has attained the highest standard of life, one cannot return home back to Godhead. One may be a Sudra, Vaishya, or a woman, but if he is situated in the service of the Lord in Krishna consciousness, he should not be considered Stri, Sudra, Vaishya, or one lower than a Sudra. A person engaged in the Lord's service, though born in a low family, should never be considered to belong to a low-born family. The Padma Purana forbids it. A person goes to hell quickly when he considers a devotee of the Lord in terms of birth. Although Sri Ramananda Raya supposedly took birth in a Sudra family, he is not to be considered a Sudra, for he was a great advanced devotee. Indeed, he was on the transcendental platform. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore embraced him. Out of spiritual humility, Sri Ramananda Raya presented himself as a Sudra. Even though one may engage in government service or in any other pound, shilling, pence business, in short, materialistic life, he need only take to Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is a very simple process. One need only chant the holy names of the Lord and strictly follow principles forbidding sinful activity. In this way, one can no longer be considered an untouchable, a Visayi, or a Sudra. One who is advanced in spiritual life should not associate with non-devotees, namely, men in government service, men engaged in materialistic activities for sense gratification, or in the service of others. Such men are considered Visayi, materialistic. It is said, a person who is very seriously engaged in cultivating devotional service with a view to crossing the ocean of nescience, and who has completely abandoned all material activities, should never see a Sudra, a Vaishya, or a woman. Of course, we were just reading in the purport, the one who is engaged in devotional service of the Lord should never be seen as a Sudra, Vaishya, or a woman. There are different levels of realization for one practicing devotional service. On an introductory level, such a person may be engaging in service. They may be reading, they may be hearing, chanting, performing other services under the guidance of an advanced devotee. But they may not be able to distinguish who is actually a devotee, engaging purely in service, and who is engaging with an ulterior motive or simply experimenting something new and different to do, they may not be able to tell. So you have to be very careful about making offenses based on seeing externally. You may see someone who's engaged in Sudra occupation to maintain themselves. But internally, they may be completely detached from the desire to enjoy materially, and they're simply engaging for maintenance. And their attachment and taste lies in remembering Krishna, seeing Krishna all the time, being respectful to other living entities, recognizing the super soul. They may be absorbed, meditating on the pastimes of the Lord, its incarnations. But externally, maybe engaged in whatever that person needs to do to maintain themselves. So it's not always easy to tell externally who's actually a devotee and who isn't. As a person continues on the path of devotional service under the direction of an advanced devotee, they can begin to distinguish who is actually in Krishna consciousness, remembering the Lord, offering prayers to the Lord, and relishing the path of devotion. And who isn't? Who's simply externally going through activities, regulated activities, under the direction of an advanced devotee. And who is actually a demon, who is actually intent on discrediting devotional service and causing problems for themselves and for others, causing disturbances. And such a person who can recognize those three can also recognize the personality of Godhead. So we want to get to that level at least, because there's more to go after that. There's ecstatic devotional service, but at least to get to the level of being able to recognize who is a devotee, who is not a devotee, who is a neophyte devotee, and who is Krishna, who is Lord Chaitanya. So someone who's engaged in devotional service to the Lord, not just going through the motions, but is awakening within their heart a relationship with the Lord, and they're tasting and relishing the path of devotion. Not to see such a person as a Sudra, a Vaishya, or a woman, because they're situated on the transcendental platform. which is what's being shown here with Ramananda Raya. He looked like a government person. It says here, the governor of Madras. But upon meeting Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his ecstatic love was overwhelming, beyond any material consideration. And the Brahmins, looking on, evidently situated on a ritualistic platform, they couldn't understand what was going on. So it's interesting, in one sense, you shouldn't see a devotee as a Sudra, Vaishya, or woman, and then in the next section of his purport, Prabhupada says, and one shouldn't see a Sudra, Vaishya, or a woman at all. So it looks like shouldn't see them. Oh, it's horrible. No, Prabhupada, I can understand this, is that someone who's actually transcendental doesn't see a Sudra, Vaishya, or a woman. Doesn't see that at all. So when he says, one who has completely abandoned all material activity should never see a Sudra, it doesn't mean, I don't want to see. No. It means they see beyond the Sudra, the Vaishya, or the woman. They never see anyone as a Sudra, Vaishya, or a woman. They see the soul. That takes it to a whole nother dimension. Not only should you not see a devotee in a particular caste or social strata, you shouldn't see anybody in a caste or social strata. You see the soul. It's very good. So, Ramananda Raya continues. You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself. Therefore, no one can understand your purpose. By your mercy, you are touching me, although this is not sanctioned by the Vedas. You have come here specifically to deliver me. You are so merciful that you alone can deliver all fallen souls. It is the general practice of all saintly people to deliver the fallen. Therefore, they go to people's houses, although they have no personal business there. My dear Lord, sometimes great saintly persons go to the homes of householders, although these householders are generally low-minded. When a saintly person visits their home, one can understand that it is for no other purpose than to benefit the householders. Along with me, there are about 1,000 men, including the Brahmins, and all of them appear to have had their hearts melted simply by seeing you. I hear everyone chanting the holy name of Krishna. Everyone's body is thrilled with ecstasy, and there are tears in everyone's eyes. Of course, would have to be. Those fortunate people that were there that saw the meeting of Lord Chaitanya and Ramananda Raya, they would have had to have been affected, had their eyes open. It's the Supreme Personality of Godhead right there, in loving relationship with his pure devotee. Just like on the Battle of Kurukshetra battlefield, everyone was liberated that was on that battlefield. Didn't matter which side they were on, if they were fighting against Krishna and Arjuna, or they were fighting for Krishna and Arjuna, simply because of Krishna and Arjuna's presence. The ones that were fighting against saw Krishna and Arjuna head on. Wherever Krishna is all auspicious, beyond auspicious. It's transcendental. Krishna means Krishna's pastimes, means his transcendental form, means his activities, means his name, means his name. Krishna is absolute. My dear sir, according to your bodily features and your behavior, you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such behavior and features are impossible for ordinary living entities, for they cannot possess such transcendental qualities. Prabhupada's purport. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's bodily features were uncommon. Indeed, his body was extraordinary in its measurements. The measurement of his chest as well as the measurement of his forearms were the same length. This is called Niagrodha Paramandala. As far as his nature is concerned, he was kind to everyone. No one but the Supreme Personality of Godhead can be kind to everyone. Therefore, the Lord's name is Krishna, all attractive. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is kind to everyone. In every species of life, he is the original father, the seed giver. How then can be unkind to any living entity? One may be a man, an animal, or even a tree, but the Lord is kind to everyone. That is God's qualification. He also says in Bhagavad Gita, Samoham Sarvabhuteshu. The Lord is equally kind to everyone. And he advises Sarvadharman Parityajya Amikam Saranam Vraja. This instruction is meant not only for Arjuna, but for all living entities. Whoever takes advantage of this offer is immediately immune to all sinful activity and turns home back to Godhead. While present on this planet, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu made the same offer. So Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamikam Saranam Vraja in the Bhagavad Gita, just surrender to me. Abandon all varieties of religiousness. Just surrender to me. I'll protect you. The Lord replied to Ramananda Raya, Sir, you are the best of the topmost devotees. Therefore, upon seeing you, everyone's heart is melted. So Ramananda Raya is saying, because everyone's standing around, they're in ecstasy, they're crying, they're overwhelmed, their hair standing on end, different things. And Ramananda Raya says to the Lord, upon seeing you, everyone has been affected. And then Lord Chaitanya says to Ramananda Raya, Sir, you are the best of the topmost devotees. Therefore, upon seeing you, everyone's heart has melted. Now, this is intimacy. This is intimacy. The Lord says, although I am a Mayavad sannyas, a non-devotee, I'm also floating in the ocean of love of Krishna simply by touching you. And what to speak of the others? Krishna glorifying his devotee. Krishna loves to do that. Loves to do that. Glorify his devotee. Knowing this, in order to rectify my heart, which is very hard, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya asked me to meet you. In this way, each of them praised the qualities of the other, and both of them were pleased to see one another. At this time, one Brahmin, Vaishnava, following Vedic principles, came and offered obeisances. He fell flat before Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and invited him for lunch. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted the Brahmin's invitation, knowing him to be a devotee, and slightly smiling spoke as follows to Ramananda Raya. So the main reason Lord Chaitanya accepted the Brahmin's invitation was he could understand the Brahmin was a devotee. The social custom at the time was regarding sannyasis is wherever they traveled, and that was what sannyasis did, was they traveled, they preached, they taught Vedic scriptures. And so wherever they went, they had no other income, and they didn't accumulate big bank balances. They simply, wherever they traveled, the Brahmins in the area would see that they had accommodations and food, and they would also hear from them, take instruction. But Lord Chaitanya was attracted to this Brahmin not just on traditional etiquette for dealing with sannyasis. He was attracted to accept the invitation of this Brahmin because the Brahmin was a devotee. So to Ramananda Raya, the Lord says, I wish to hear from you about Lord Krishna. Indeed, my mind is inclined to desire this. Therefore, I wish to see you again. Ramananda Raya replied, My Lord, although you have come to correct me, a fallen soul, my mind is not yet purified simply by seeing you. Please stay for 5 or 7 days and kindly cleanse my polluted mind. After that much time, my mind will certainly be pure. Although neither could tolerate the other's separation, Ramananda Roy nonetheless offered his obeisances to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and departed. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then went to the house of the Brahmin who had invited him and took his lunch there. When the evening of that day arrived, both Ramananda Roy and the Lord were eager to meet one another again. After finishing his evening bath, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sat down and waited for Ramananda Roy to come. Then Ramananda Roy, accompanied by one servant, came to meet him. Ramananda Roy approached Lord Sri Chaitanya and offered his respectful obeisances, and the Lord embraced him. Then they both began to discuss Krishna in a secluded place. I think this is a good place to take a break discussing Krishna. Even Krishna likes to discuss Krishna. The Lord's pleased with discussions about him. Here he's taking the part of his own devotee. So what does a devotee do? Is they discuss with other devotees topics of Krishna. First, because it's so relishable. And then also, others benefit when they hear the discussions. Let's take a little break.